Sarah and David had been married for nearly a decade, and in that time, they had learned that waiting could sometimes feel like an endless journey. They had always envisioned a life filled with laughter and the sound of little footsteps running through the house. But after years of trying to conceive, their journey had become one of hospital visits, invasive procedures, and hope that was constantly met with disappointment. They had been through every fertility treatment available to them, even saving up to try the most advanced methods. Each attempt was met with cautious optimism, but after numerous tries, they had to come to terms with the reality that parenthood might not be in their future. The ache in Sarah's heart was relentless, but she learned to hide it, burying her disappointment each time she saw another friend announce a pregnancy or shared a photo of their newborn. David, too, masked his sadness, pretending to be content, while inside, he felt like he was failing his wife and their dream. After years of fighting for what they wanted, they had finally reached a silent understanding. They would live for each other, love each other, and build a happy life together, just the two of them. Sarah dove into new hobbies, filling her days with painting and yoga, while David threw himself into his career, taking on projects that would keep him busy and his mind distracted. Slowly, they found a fragile peace, though the ache of what might have been was always there, lingering just beneath the surface. One morning, Sarah woke up feeling different. She felt unusually tired and slightly queasy, but dismissed it as the flu or maybe exhaustion from her new fitness routine. She went about her day, brushing off the thought that had occasionally crossed her mind. She had learned to ignore her body's tricks, false hopes that would lead her to take a test, only to find it negative again and again. But by the fourth day, something told her this was different. Despite her better judgment, she picked up a pregnancy test on her way home, trying not to let hope rise too high. In the quiet of their bathroom, Sarah stared at the test, her heart pounding. And there it was, a second pink line. She blinked, staring harder, as if it might disappear. She didn't trust her eyes, didn't trust herself to believe it could actually be real. Grabbing another test, she took it, then another, each confirming the same incredible truth. After all these years, after every tear, after they had nearly given up, she was pregnant. Sarah fell to her knees, overcome with a wave of emotions she could barely contain. She sobbed in that little bathroom, clutching the tests in her hand. All those years of heartbreak, of feeling empty, suddenly felt worth it. The miracle they had waited for was here, growing inside her. Once the initial shock and euphoria settled, Sarah's mind went to David. How would she tell him? Over the years, they had discussed every possible way they would share the news if it ever happened, imagining joyfully shouting it from the rooftops, telling family and friends in excited phone calls. But as time passed, and the reality of infertility became their constant companion, those conversations faded, becoming distant memories of hope they dared not revisit. She knew she wanted to make this moment unforgettable. After all, David had been her anchor, supporting her through every disappointment and setback, always assuring her that he loved her no matter what. He was her best friend, her confidant, her constant, and now, finally, she had something miraculous to give him. Sarah decided on a quiet, intimate dinner. She spent hours planning every detail, wanting it to be perfect. She cooked his favorite dishes, lit candles around the dining room, and decorated the table with soft white flowers. At the center of the table, she placed a small, beautifully wrapped gift box with a delicate ribbon. Inside, she put a tiny pair of white baby shoes and a handwritten note. "Our miracle is on the way." As she looked around the room, nerves fluttered in her stomach. She tried to imagine his reaction but found herself overwhelmed with a mixture of excitement and anxiety. She took a deep breath, running her hands over her stomach, already protective of the life growing inside her. When David walked in that evening, he immediately noticed the warm glow of the candles and the aroma of his favorite meal filling the air. He raised an eyebrow, his face lighting up in a playful smile. "What's all this for?" he asked, looking around with surprise. Sarah laughed nervously. "I just wanted to do something special for us." They sat together, enjoying dinner, reminiscing about their early days together, the adventures they'd shared, and the quiet life they'd built over the years. Sarah felt herself growing more anxious with every passing moment, but she held her composure, waiting for the perfect time. Finally, as they finished dessert, she pushed the small box across the table to him. "I have a little gift for you," she said, her voice wavering slightly. He looked at her curiously, the corners of his mouth turning up in a soft smile as he took the box. As he carefully unwrapped it, he lifted the lid and froze when he saw the tiny shoes inside. His gaze shifted to the note, his eyes moving slowly over the words. Then he looked up at her, his eyes wide and glistening. "Sarah, are you?" His voice was barely a whisper, filled with disbelief and emotion he could hardly contain. She nodded, tears already streaming down her face as she whispered back, "Yes, David, we're going to be parents." For a moment, he just stared, processing the words. Then, in one swift motion, he was out of his chair, kneeling beside her, wrapping his arms around her as tears spilled down his cheeks. They held each other tightly, their silent embrace speaking volumes about the years of pain and waiting, and the joy that was now bursting from within them. The hours that followed were filled with whispered conversations, laughter, and tears. They talked about all the what-ifs they had once dared not speak aloud. They spoke of baby names, of late-night feedings and sleepless nights, and the dreams they had once buried, now rising to the surface with vivid, new life. As they lay in bed that night, Sarah rested her head on David's chest, feeling his heartbeat. He gently placed his hand on her belly, the weight of his palm grounding them in this new reality. They were going to be parents. "You know," he said softly, "I never gave up on us, on this. I stopped hoping out loud, but inside, I was always praying for this day." Sarah's hand found his, resting on her stomach. "Me too," she whispered. "I thought it would never happen, but something inside me wouldn't let go." In the days that followed, Sarah and David began to share their miracle with family and close friends. Each call was met with cheers, tears, and disbelief, as everyone who loved them knew the struggles they had endured. Sarah's mother wept with joy, and David's father, usually a stoic man, choked up, unable to speak for several moments. Friends who had walked alongside them on their infertility journey were especially emotional, knowing how deeply Sarah and David had yearned for this moment. And for the first time in years, Sarah felt lighter, as though a burden she had carried for so long had finally been lifted. As her pregnancy progressed, Sarah cherished every moment. She found joy in the little things, seeing her body change, feeling the first fluttering movements, and watching David prepare the nursery with an excitement she'd never seen before. They spent countless hours reading parenting books, attending birthing classes, and dreaming together of the life they would soon share. Every doctor's visit felt like a miracle, each heartbeat a reassurance that their long wait was worth it. And as Sarah looked back on their journey, she realized that every setback, every tear, every moment of despair had led them to this incredible gift. They had been tested, stretched, and shaped by their journey, and now they were stronger, closer, and more grateful than they had ever been. 9 months later, on a crisp autumn morning, Sarah and David held their newborn son in their arms. He was tiny, perfect, and everything they had ever dreamed of. As they looked at him, they knew that every heartache, every sleepless night spent longing had been worth it. They had waited years for this miracle, and now, as they gazed at their child, they felt complete. In the quiet of the hospital room, with their son nestled between them, they whispered promises of love, laughter, and a life filled with all the joy they had longed to share. They were finally a family, a dream fulfilled in the most beautiful, miraculous way.